Can you change your fate just by telling yourself the right words? Sounds like a fairy tale. But I know people who got out of debt, overcame fear, became leaders, and it all started with a single sentence they repeated every day. Stay until the end of this video, and I will give you an affirmation formula that works not on the level of motivation, but on the level of transformation. It's a paradox. What a person fears most is not what might happen to them, but who they believe themselves to be. We're not afraid of failure. We're afraid of the inner voice that says, "You are not enough." Now imagine, you hear that voice every day, not from others, from yourself, and not once, dozens of times a day, and with every repetition, it grows stronger, because our mind is not a judge. It is a gardener. It doesn't evaluate what's good or bad. It cultivates whatever you keep repeating to it. Every affirmation is either a seed of strength or a poisonous weed that grows in silence. People often underestimate the power of words because they're invisible. But a word becomes a thought becomes a belief becomes an action becomes a habit, and a habit becomes destiny. This is not magic. It's a simple, practical formula for self-influence. And the worst part, most affirmations don't work. They sound nice, but they don't reach the core. Because for a word to change you, it must not come from a book, but from your essence. And today I'll show you how to do that. How to create phrases that don't just comfort, but transform. As I once said, you cannot speak defeat and expect victory. I remember the first time I heard the phrase, "Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better." It was the early 60s, and an acquaintance of mine had read it in a book by Emile Coué and repeated it to himself 10 times every morning. He believed it helped. I smiled, but deep down I doubted. How could a few words change an outcome? But then I watched him. And what happened? 6 months later, he was already a different person. More focused, calm, driven. It seemed those words were doing something after all, but not on their own. He didn't just repeat them, he lived them. He built his new self every day, starting with what he told himself before even getting out of bed. Now let me ask you, what do you say to yourself in the morning when you wake up? Do you say, "Here we go again," or maybe, "This is another chance to grow stronger"? The difference seems small, but it changes the direction of your energy. Because remember, an affirmation is not a magic spell. It's a course you set for the ship of your consciousness. If you tell yourself every day that the world is hard, people are unfair, and you're just surviving, don't be surprised when you find yourself exactly where that prayer leads you. And yes, I consciously use the word prayer, because an affirmation is a form of faith. And faith isn't what you declare publicly, it's what you say within yourself, quietly, every day, with no audience. That's why most people don't believe in affirmation, because they confuse them with pretty phrases set against a sunset background. But a true affirmation is a statement you accept as truth before it becomes reality. Once I was a young man with a pile of debt, no confidence, and no plan. That's when I first began experimenting with affirmations, but not with cliches. With a simple sentence I heard from my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, "I am not my circumstances. I am my choices." I began saying it to myself daily, at first mechanically, then with defiance, and eventually with conviction. And something started to change. Not the world, me, and only then, the world. Here's why affirmations don't work for most people. Because they repeat words that carry no emotional weight. They say, "I am rich," but deep inside there's a void. They say, "I am confident," but inside, doubt grips their throat. An affirmation only works when it's grounded in real emotional soil. You have to feel it before it becomes true. Now listen closely. Don't deceive yourself. You're already using affirmations every day. They just might be negative ones. "I can't handle this. Nothing works out for me. I'm not worthy." These are also affirmations. You're not just imagining success, you're rehearsing failure. Every time you tell yourself you're not capable of something, you're reinforcing that belief. And the more you repeat it, the deeper it roots itself in your identity. That's why I say any affirmation is not a formula for the world. It's a formula for you. It doesn't change the external, it changes how you feel about yourself. And that, in turn, changes your actions. And actions are always the result of beliefs. Let me give you one more example. A man in one of my programs once said, "Jim, I tried affirmations, but they don't work." I asked, "Which one did you use?" He said, "I repeat it every day. I am happy." I smiled and said, "But you're not happy. You don't believe that yourself." Then I suggested a different phrase. "I am open to new ways of finding joy." See the difference? The first is a declaration that triggers resistance. The second is a direction. And over time, he began to change because he had shifted his inner mindset. So a true affirmation doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks only one thing: openness. openness to change your inner dialogue. Because your brain isn't stupid. It doesn't believe mantras, but it does believe in repetition, in consistency, in intention. If you say to yourself every day, I am someone who keeps promises to myself, and you back it up with action, you become exactly that person. So what makes an affirmation effective? There are three components: the right form, internal alignment, and repetition with action. You see, many people repeat beautiful words but fail to check the most important thing, whether that phrase aligns with how they act. An affirmation without action is like a map without a road. You know where you want to go, but you won't move an inch. Let's start with form. An affirmation should be in the present tense, personal and process-oriented. Not, I will be happy, but I already find joy in the simple things. Not, I will become successful, but I am already acting like a successful person. Why is this important? Because the brain responds to the now, not to an abstract someday. Everything you postpone, you surrender to uncertainty. Next, alignment. A true affirmation must be close to your inner truth. Not fake, not flashy, but something that doesn't repel you. I once worked with a young salesman. He told himself, I am a brilliant speaker. But after every call, he felt discouraged. I offered him a different phrase. I am learning to be persuasive in every conversation. That was the truth. And that truth gave him strength. You don't need to lie to yourself. You need to tell yourself a truth that points forward. An affirmation is a compass, not fireworks. It doesn't have to impress, it has to guide. And here's the third point, action. You can tell yourself 1,000 times, I am a leader. But if in a tough situation you run from responsibility, your affirmation doesn't just lose power, it undermines your trust in yourself. A paradox, right? But here's the core. An affirmation is a commitment to yourself. If I say, I'm someone who finishes what I start, then every unfinished task works against my identity. And now the most important thing, affirmations aren't about self-hypnosis, they're about identity. Identity is your internal image of yourself. And that image shapes your actions, your reactions, your ability to succeed. When you change who you see yourself as, you change everything. As Jim Rohn said, if you want to have more, you have to become more. And the first becoming doesn't start with actions. It starts with what you tell yourself. I remember a time when my speaking engagements were increasing, but something wasn't working. People listened, applauded, but I didn't feel the impact. So I asked myself, what is my affirmation before going on stage? Turns out I didn't have one. My mental soundtrack was filled with anxiety. What if it doesn't land? What if they don't connect? So I changed it. Before every speech, I started saying, I am a messenger of value. My goal is to serve. A simple sentence, no fluff, but it calmed and directed me. It didn't make me a better speaker, and it made me clearer with myself. And in that was power. Identity is the foundation. Want change? Change the language you use with yourself. Not, I'm undisciplined, but I'm developing the habit of acting despite my mood. Not, I'm procrastinating again, but every day I'm learning to choose action over delay. Not perfect, but truthful. And that truth builds. Let's return to the daily ritual. Affirmations don't work randomly. They work consistently. I've always said, success is not an event, it's a practice. The same applies to words. If you're not building yourself daily, the world will paint your portrait for you. And as experience shows, it'll likely be a picture of someone tired, confused, and full of doubt. One of my students, Jeff, struggled for years with imposter syndrome. Every time he was given a project, he'd say, I probably just got lucky. I asked him to start using a daily affirmation. I get projects because I am prepared, focused, and worthy of trust. At first, it felt unnatural to him, but over time, that thought became familiar because he started acting in line with that thought. And that's when the transformation began. So, a proper affirmation is not a vague dream. It's a clear direction. It's like a code you write into your operating system. And you know what? You're already programming yourself every day. The only question is, consciously or chaotically? And now I'll say the most important thing. An affirmation isn't about who you want to become. It's about who you are already becoming, right now, through the thoughts you choose, through the words you repeat, through the reality you speak into existence. I often said, success is not something you achieve. It's something you become. And this is where the true power of affirmations lies. Because if your words aren't leading you toward a new version of yourself, they're just pleasant noise, sometimes even harmful. Nothing undermines your inner strength like repeating phrases you don't believe in, and don't back up with action. I learned this the hard way. I remember the evening I came home and found the fridge empty. It wasn't just physical hunger, it was an internal sense of complete bankruptcy, and in that moment I couldn't say, I am rich and successful. That would have been a lie. But I said something else. I am no longer someone who lives by chance. I am becoming someone who takes responsibility. That was my first real affirmation. It wasn't loud, it was honest. And that one phrase began to shift the course of my life. What you tell yourself is not your reality, yet, but it's your instruction to reality. An affirmation isn't if only, it's this is what I'm building right now. Now ask yourself, what instruction are you constantly repeating to yourself? Are you programming yourself for fatigue, fear, or helplessness? Because even I don't know what to do is an affirmation. And if you say it often enough, it becomes a belief. And beliefs, they become behavioral programs. Here's another key point. Most affirmations don't work because they're copied from a book, from a video, from Instagram, but they have no connection to your personal story. I've always said knowledge is potential, but applied knowledge is power. Same goes here. Someone else's phrase might inspire you, but only your truth can transform you. That's why I suggest, don't look for the perfect affirmation. Create your own. Look in the mirror and ask, who do I want to be? How do I want to act? What mindset do I want to embody? Then craft a statement that becomes your inner contract with yourself. For example, I am someone who does the hard things even when I don't feel like it. Or, I choose calm in every situation. Or, I am someone who keeps my word to myself. Now remember Jim Rohn, not just as a speaker, but as a man who once stood on the edge of despair. He had debts, no formal education, no clear direction. But he started telling himself every day, I am no longer a victim of circumstances. I am the author of my story. It sounds simple, but try saying that when your pockets are empty. Try repeating it when the world seems indifferent. That's when those words become the foundation of a new life. And you know what's interesting? An affirmation only works when you're ready not to give up, even when it hasn't yet become true. Because if it doesn't move you, it won't change you. But if it does, hold on to it like a rope in a storm. I've always said, the major key to your better future is you. And here's what I mean. You are the one who decides which words echo in your mind each day. You are the one who chooses whether those words are words of weakness or words of choice. Not the government, not your parents, not the economy. You. Most people wait for external change, but true progress begins with internal dialogue. Make it a rule. Start each day not with the news, not with anxiety, not with pressure, but with a phrase that shapes you. Mine was, today, I create myself again. It's short, but it's deep. Because life isn't an outcome. It's a process of becoming, and you are the chief sculptor. And remember, the right affirmation isn't medicine, it's training. It doesn't take away pain or remove problems. It prepares you for them. It strengthens your spine, straightens your shoulders, aligns your mind. And over time, day by day, it becomes more than just words. It becomes you. So at this point, you have to ask yourself, what phrase echoes in my head every day, and where is it leading me? And isn't it time to replace it with one that builds strength, clarity, and resilience? I've always said, don't just let your life happen, live it by design. And right now, this is the moment to turn this video into more than just motivation. Let it be the beginning of a new path in your life. Because everything we talked about today, it's not theory, it's an invitation to act, but not chaotically, intentionally. And it begins with something simple, looking in the mirror and answering honestly. What words are shaping my day? Let's do a small exercise together. Not physical, mental. It's simple, yet deep. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine that you wake up this morning and hear only one sentence in your head. It's yours alone. And this sentence is the first thing shaping your mood, your action, your confidence. What is that sentence? Now open your eyes and ask yourself, does that phrase actually give me strength, or does it hold me back? Are these my words, or someone else's programming I've unconsciously adopted? Here's what I ask you to do next. Grab a pen or open your notes app and answer 5 questions. Not for anyone else, for yourself. They're simple, but incredibly revealing. Rate each point from 1 to 10. 1 being everything's falling apart, 10 being I'm living fully in alignment with this. First, how much control do I have over my inner dialogue versus letting random thoughts run the show? Second, to what extent do my affirmations reflect who I want to become, not who I used to be? Do my words translate into action, or do they stay trapped in my head? Fourth, how consciously do I choose the language I use with myself every day? Fifth, am I building my identity around strength or around fear, doubt, and excuses? Be honest. No one will see this but you. And if you rated yourself a 5 or lower on any point, that's not bad. That's diagnosis. That's a starting point for growth. Because as I've said, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction. Now choose one, just one weak spot that needs strengthening. Only one. Don't try to change everything at once. Just one place where your affirmation isn't working yet, and create a new phrase. Simple, clear, understandable, and crucially, one you can back up with action. Here's the final request. Commit for 7 days to repeat your affirmation every morning and take one small action that confirms it. If your affirmation is, I am a disciplined person, then do one task each day, regardless of how you feel. If your phrase is, I am calm in any situation, then pause and choose your response, not your reaction, in every conflict. This isn't a marathon. It's not magic. It's 7 days of your choice, your new language, your new identity. After that, you won't be able to see yourself the same way again because you will have updated yourself. And one more thing, if this video has been helpful, don't forget to subscribe because we're going even deeper from here. We're not stopping at motivation. We're building a foundation together. And if you'd like, share your affirmation in the comments. Maybe your sentence will be the inspiration someone else needs. Because as you already know, words have power. But the real power is when those words unite people who are ready to grow. I believe that every person who has made it to this point has already taken an important step. You didn't just listen to my words, you let them pass through you. And that right there is the beginning of a new language, a language of strength, a language of choice, a language spoken by someone who doesn't wait for life to change, but picks up the brush and starts painting. I've always said, don't join an easy crowd. Go where the expectations are high. The pressure is to perform, to grow, to become. And today, that standard is your daily affirmation, your new word, your new promise. Because in the end, we don't become what we declare, we become what we reinforce with every thought, every sentence, every small action. And when those actions grow out of truth, out of inner resolve, then affirmations aren't just words, they are a declaration of identity. So don't delay, choose your words. Start a new day with a new phrase, and remember, you are the author. You are not a victim of the script. You are the one who writes the first line, and therefore the last. Hold on, do the work, repeat, and become. Because that is exactly how, day by day, the person you've always carried within begins to emerge.